What's up? Moonrider here, and this is the Nimbleback NB832 that LTC sent my way. Depending on where you purchase, the NB832 can be available for as low as $49.99, and at that price point it features a hot swappable PCB, tri-mode connectivity, a volume knob with flashy RGB accent lighting, a soft and quiet gasket mount structure, plus 5 layers of sound dampening and enhancing film to give this board an incredible sound and feel, which I think makes this keyboard a budget badass. However, that's not to say it's perfect, and I'll share those cons with you so you can decide for yourself whether the NB832 is worth your time and money. Now, with all those layers of sound absorbing padding and sound enhancing film, not to mention the gasket mounts, it's pretty obvious the NB832 is designed for a smooth and satisfying typing experience. Before LTC sent me this keyboard, I was mainly switching between two others. The Redragon K686 Asa Pro was my jack of all trades. As another gasket mount keyboard, it was excellent for typing and great for gaming. Still, I preferred something a little more for gaming. This Redragon Fizz K617 with magnetic switches. This was my go-to keyboard for long nights and fast-paced FPS games. That's why I keep it in arm's reach on this pegboard shelf right behind my main monitor. But then, 2 weeks ago, the Nimbleback was delivered. I was actually already playing Borderlands the pre-sequel that night with the K617, this guy, when I got the package and decided to open it and give it a try. All it took was one try. I used it for the rest of the night and every day and night since, for work and for play. The sound and feel are just that good. It's so good, this is now my undisputed favorite keyboard in my collection, and it isn't even close to being my most expensive one. Have a listen for yourself, then we'll cover more on the sound dampening layers and the switches. The main source of that incredible sound is the 5 layers of sound dampening. For starters, there are 3 layers between the positioning plate and the PCB. From top to bottom, there's a sheet of sound dampening PU foam, then an IXPE switch sound dampening pad, and a PET sound enhancement pad right on top of the PCB. Meanwhile, between the PCB and the bottom of the case are the last 2 layers, with one being a sheet of EVA sound dampening foam, and lastly a silicone dampening pad at the very bottom. All these layers significantly reduce hollow sounds, while the PET enhancement film provides pleasant hi-fi acoustic feedback. The combined result is a quiet and creamy audible experience. Meanwhile, switches play a part as well, but they're also perhaps one of the cons of this keyboard, which I mentioned earlier. You see, the switches sound great. They're prelubed linear, so they're quiet, smooth, and are without that springy ping you'll hear on a lot of cheap switches. Pair that with well-lubed stabilizers, and you've got an even quieter, smoother typing experience. In my honest opinion, the switches sound and feel great, but then I pulled off a keycap to take a closer look at them, and there I found a bit of a problem. They're manufactured by a brand called Content. I tried to find any information on them that I could, but I found nothing. LTC doesn't provide any specs on their official website, nor on their Amazon listing. All that turned up were 2 Reddit posts, and a good number of posters commented it was the first time hearing about the brand. A few others said they were a very budget switch, or they were, quote, okay, but they die very quickly. Mine died after 1 month. That's reassuring. Someone else said, quote, they're very cheap, but actually very satisfying to type on, but I wonder how long they'll last. I can attest to the claim they're satisfying to type on, but now I'm worried about their longevity. Fortunately, the NB832 is hot swappable with most 3 and 5 pin switches. I tested out 2 of my favorite switches from Redragon keyboards, a custom purple tactile and a Redragon linear red. Both switches fit, and the best part, they sound exceptional in the NB832. The custom purple tactile sounds a bit too different since it's a super thocky switch, but the Redragon linear red sound almost identical to the linear blue content switch, which means, as I stated not long ago, The main source of that incredible sound on the NB832 is the 5 layers of sound dampening, and not so much switches. So if you've got an extra set of switches lying around, all you have to do is swap them in and the contents out, and you've got yourself a well-dampened keyboard with more reliable switches. In the box, along with the keyboard, you'll find a USB cable, keycap and switch puller in case you want to or need to replace the switches. For spare switches, you'll probably want to hang on to. And lastly, a user manual that walks you through wireless connection and shortcut keys for Windows and Mac. Design-wise, I think the NB832 looks really good, especially in the more compact 75% form factor. And despite its reduced size, it still has 5 navigation keys in delete, home, and page up and page down, which stand out by their teal keycaps and coral orange legends. The case is flexible plastic, and underneath there are no kickstand feet to incline the keyboard. Instead, there are 4 convex circular rubber feet that don't do a whole lot in the way of holding the keyboard in place against a push or pull, but at least in my experience, just resting my hands on the board during typing or gaming hasn't been enough to unintentionally relocate it. The NB832 also comes in 2 color options. This one being the tri-colored Sunset Ocean White, which is chef's kiss, and there's the Forest Night Black, which looks pretty cool as a stealthy aesthetic. The volume knob is useful enough, but I wish it was color matched to the case. Otherwise, like this, I feel it stands out since it's the only piece of black accented on the keyboard. Well, I guess save for the Nimbleback branding on the front. Still, I think white would look nice and still allow the RGB to pop. Minor foibles. Still, the dial is diamond textured on what feels like a metal dial that's cool to the touch. I've seen metal painted plastic volume dials on more expensive keyboards than this, so good on LTC. The RGB is customizable to a degree. Function plus Homes, which is the RGB mode, while Function plus End changes the color when set to an applicable mode. And even Function plus Page Up can adjust the brightness. Keycaps on the NB832 are double shot and made of PBT with a CSA profile. Despite this keyboard not offering kickstand feet like I'm used to using, the CSA profile actually offers a comfortable ergonomic experience for typing and gaming, while simultaneously catering to a precision aspect of gaming by providing an ideal ridge that keeps my fingers on the intended keycap. It seems most keyboards today offer tri-mode connectivity with wired USB-C, wireless 2.4G mode, and Bluetooth 3 or 5.0. The NB832 is no exception to that trend. Wired mode is for the most part basic plug and play from the USB-C port on the back of the keyboard to your PC or Mac. The only caveat is the mode switch on the back does need to be set toward the USB icon to operate. Meanwhile, both wireless 2.4G mode and Bluetooth 5.0 require the mode switch to be set toward the wireless icon to operate. Wireless 2.4G mode or 2.4 GHz mode involves removing the USB receiver from the rear of the keyboard and plugging it into your PC or Mac system. The keyboard should automatically connect to the receiver, but in the event it doesn't, long press Function plus 4 for 3 seconds to repair the receiver. For Bluetooth 5.0, with the switch set to wireless, long press Function plus 1, 2, or 3 for 3 seconds to enter pairing mode. On your PC, Mac, or Android device, add Bluetooth and it should be discoverable as NB832. Meanwhile, since you can connect the keyboard to up to 3 devices at a time, switch between the channels by short pressing Function plus 1, 2, or 3. Now, what would a gaming keyboard be without RGB? The NB832's backlighting is almost identical to so many other keyboards from the likes of Red Dragon and Royal Kludge. They all seem to have the same, if not closely similar, RGB modes or patterns, so you might be familiar with all the backlighting has to offer. But unlike other similar keyboards, the manual key commands aren't exactly the same. While Function plus right and left arrows affect faster and slower speed, respectively, Function plus up and down don't dictate brightness. Instead, Function plus up arrow cycles the RGB pattern, and Function plus down arrow cycles RGB color when set to an applicable pattern. If you want to adjust the brightness, well, you'll never guess. Press Function plus F6 and Function plus F5 to increase or decrease the brightness, respectively. Bit of an interesting choice of assignment. Meanwhile, Function plus backslash turns the backlight on and off, while long pressing Function plus spacebar restores factory settings to the NB832. If you prefer more precise control of your RGB as well as access to customizing key bindings and adjusting performance functions, you can download the free software from ltcofficial.com/pages/download and select NB832 in the keyboard section. Once installed, open up the software. The top icon on the left grants you access to device info such as your firmware and software version. There's also a setting for tap but I'm not 100% sure what that really does, though I have seen the same option on similar offerings from Royal Kludge and Red Dragon. Below that is a sleep mode slider where you can turn off sleep mode altogether, or adjust it to fall asleep after as little as 30 seconds of inactivity to as much as 20 minutes of inactivity. Below that, you'll find an adjustable debounce slider, and lastly, a reset button to restore the keyboard to factory settings. The next icon is key assignment, and this allows you to reassign keys and create key combinations. Next is light effects, where you can choose different RGB patterns, adjust brightness, speed, and even color. By selecting self-define, you can individually assign a color to each individual LED. The next icon directs you to effects, which are RGB patterns that are reactive to the audio playing through your device, which means your voice won't throw off the rhythm since it's communicated directly between the devices, which is kind of cool. And lastly, the macro editing panel for you macro creators. As for battery power, the NB832 comes stuffed with a whopping 4,000 mAh battery. Lifespan specs are scant, but in my experience, I ran this keyboard in wireless 2.4G mode with RGB on for 2 weeks before finally receiving a low power indication. In that time, I used it almost every day for several hours at a time, so I'd have to assume the battery can last at least 40 plus hours on a single charge. Of course, with RGB off, that lifespan tends to increase exponentially. You can always check battery level yourself by pressing function plus backspace to see the remaining battery level displayed in a 10th percentile across the function keys. So if F10 is lit green, the battery has a 90% charge or higher, and when it's lit all the way up to F6, the battery has about 60% of charge left. Now that we've looked at the NB832's features and specs in closer detail, I want to know what you think. So leave me a comment and let me know if the NB832 is a budget badass or cheap. For me personally, I can't praise this keyboard enough, though I am seriously considering swapping out those switches just so I don't have to worry about them possibly breaking down on me. I mean, I have the extra switches on hand, so why not? Unconfirmed switch quality aside, the sound and feel of this budget keyboard is unmatched compared to anything I've used before, and that includes boards with twice the price tag. I can understand concern over the questionable switch quality. The quality of the gasket mount structure and the 5 layers of sound dampening and enhancing film make it worth it, at least to me. Anyway, that's it for my review of the LTC Nimbleback NB832. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like and be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more gaming setup content or gaming tech reviews like this. Thanks for watching. Later.